Hi there, my name is Janet Gershen-Siegel and I'm an author. And today I'd like to read to you Chapter 5 of my book, Revved Up. Straw 5, The Birding Shock. I don't know if you enjoy the pleasures of birding, officer. If you don't, then perhaps you're a bit like my teenage children. They're good children, yes, but they seem to be less than enthused when I take out the binoculars in the book, although my son is rather interested in the binoculars at times. His interest perked up considerably when the weather improved, and the lady of the POJ family began parading around in even shorter shorts, and in a vulgar style known as a tank top. I do not believe that she wears a brassiere. In fact, between you and me, if you don't mind my saying so, officer, but I'm not certain she even knows what a brassiere is. Then again, it is a naughty word. Perhaps her family was as strict as mine, and they kept it out of her education. It's impossible to tell, naturally. So birding is such a lovely activity for a family. Why, I met my ex-husband when we were birding. At least that's what he claimed to be doing, but the truth is that we never went birding after we had been courting for maybe more than 3 months or so. Such a pity. I think if he had paid more attention to nuthatches than to his FLOOZY of a secretary, we might not have broken our home. Oh, yes. I can see you want me to tell you all about what happened with birding, and why you find it so important. You see, the Birding Society in my parents' neighborhood is an extremely active organization. There are all manner of activities planned from March through November of every year. There are sighting expeditions each week, and lectures from some of the more prominent members of the society, and slideshows and the like. My father is considered to be a foremost neighborhood authority on the blue-winged warbler. He can go on a bit if the conditions are right. Well, the Birding Society was to have a potluck lunch, as they do every year. I'm always invited, as are my children. They often sit and fidget and the like. My son gets particularly difficult, although he was better last year, when he was permitted to bring a small musical recording device and play it, so long as the earphones were firmly ensconced in his ears and the volume was kept at a reasonable level. I noticed my daughter took rather extensive notes last year, although I did notice later that the notes were actually some images that she drew. Officer, I have to tell you, I was unaware that she knew what such things looked like. Oh yes, my apologies for the delay, officer. I appreciate your allowing me a few moments to collect myself. This year, for much of April and May, we would hear some small bits of thunder late at night when everyone respectable was already long asleep. Of course, I only heard of some of it, as I generally would go to my own home to repose for the night. But my parents tell me that they would hear things. They also, well, this is somewhat interesting. You see, as you know, we have fully embraced recycling, as have many of our fine neighborhoods. Yet there was one time in late May when the lid of the recycling can of the POJ family's home became undone, and the garbage collectors unfortunately dumped its contents into the street. My mother gathered up some of the mess and brought it inside. It was these small, cylindrical, shell-like items. Some had a bit of a burned-out aroma to them, it seems. My mother is a rather crafty woman, and so she and my father made a dollhouse out of matches and used these shell-like items to create a picket fence around the miniature structure. Then they gave it to my daughter. I wrote her thank you note, as I often do, and she placed it, I believe, in the back of her closet. I haven't seen it recently. Well, around the time that the recycling was strewn about so carelessly, the Birding Society noted that their standard census of birds was down, particularly the blue-winged warblers. It seemed that their numbers had decreased rather markedly. They were going to have a meeting about it, but the potluck lunch was coming up, and so they decided to combine the two events. The entire neighborhood was invited, and all were rather anxious to see what the POJ family was going to bring. My mother naturally made her famous Jell-O salad. I made 3-bean salad. I know that the family directly across the street from my parents made liverwurst and olive spread. It's quite good, officer. I can handwrite the recipe out for you when we're all done, all right? Oh, said the potluck. Well, the POJ family arrived late, and as always, they looked as if they had just gotten out of bed, even though it was after 1 in the afternoon. The weather was quite warm, and the lady of that house had on a rather small bathing suit. The bottom was, I believe it's what's referred to as a thong. My son made an effort to be gracious and engage her in conversation. He's such a good boy. But the problem was the horror of what they had brought to the potluck. Officer, you will not believe it. It was a cookie sheet with certain... Oh, it's just too awful to contemplate. I thank you again for giving me some time to collect myself, officer. The cookie sheet was crowded with the burned carcasses of several blue-winged warblers. Needless to say, the potluck ceased being at all appetizing after that. Once again, my name is Janet Gershen-Siegel, and I am the author of this piece. And I thank you for listening to Chapter 5 of Revved Up. If you'd like to read this online, please go to Wattpad, and my user ID there is Jespah, Jespah. Thank you for listening.